Welcome to another episode of TrialSite News. Today we're going to be discussing a lawsuit that was just announced yesterday. The story broke on Fox News' Tucker Carlson show. This lawsuit by the Children's Health Defense, we here at TrialSite News, and other plaintiffs is against the Trusted News Initiative. A cabal of players, including the BBC, First Draft, Google, YouTube, Twitter, Reuters, Meta or Facebook, and the Washington Post. The Trusted News Initiative, or the TNI, whose stated goal was to try and take on disinformation in real time, instead crushed and quelled competition, damaged speech, and the ability for truth to be spoken these past number of years. We're going to discuss what is going on with this lawsuit. And so from TrialSite News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, we have faced innumerable assaults on our free speech during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the news, for example, it is clear that the United States government has been directing private entities on what information to allow. But the attack on truth has also been led by our most respected legacy media entities. On January 10th, yesterday, Children's Health Defense, we at TrialSite News, and other plaintiffs sued the Washington Post, the British Broadcasting Company, Associated Press, and Reuters, along with the largest tech companies for trying to stifle competition and free speech. In the form of the Trusted News Initiative, these defendants ironically appear guilty of antitrust violations as set forth in the complaint. The case was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas Amarillo Division, led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The plaintiffs include TrialSite Inc., or TrialSiteNews.com, Creative Destruction Media, health writer Erin Elizabeth Finn, Gateway Pundit founder Jim Hoft, Dr. Ben Tapper, Ben Swan, Dr. Joseph McCullough, and Ty and Charlene Bollinger. Traditionally, antitrust violations involve businesses colluding together to hurt competitors. In the media speech context, this type of violation earns extra legal scrutiny since the First Amendment can be implicated here. State plaintiffs' attorneys Ryan Brown of Amarillo, Texas, and John Howard of California at the beginning of their filing said that it is also an action to defend the freedom of speech and of the press. They allege that in 2019 or 2020, some of the largest news publishers, including defendants, the Washington Post, the British Broadcasting Corporation, Reuters, and the Associated Press, along with the largest social media companies, entered into a self-described industry partnership. They called this partnership the Trusted News Initiative, and by their own statements, they agreed to work as a group and did so in order to remove news publishers who challenged the TNI members' reporting on COVID-19 related issues from the Earth's largest internet platforms. Under U.S. federal antitrust law, this type of industry partnership is called a group boycott, and the attorneys allege that this is a presumptive violation of the Sherman Act. The complaint quotes legal authorities stating that this kind of boycott is a concerted attempt by a group of competitors to disadvantage other competitors by either directly denying or persuading or coercing suppliers or customers to deny relationships the competitors need in the competitive struggle, or cutting off access to a supply, facility, or market necessary to enable the boycotted firm to compete. The attorneys would continue. They said that the world's dominant internet platforms are facilities essential to the ability of small news publishers to compete and even to survive in the online news market. Indeed, for all practical purposes, to be denied access to these platforms is to be denied access to the market itself. So, again, quoting from legal authorities per the complaint, the TNI is a classic group boycott. A concerted attempt by a group of competitors to disadvantage other competitors by cutting off access to a facility or market necessary to enable the boycotted firms to compete. Now, the counsel would go on to say that the plaintiffs are among the many victims of the TNI's agreement and its group boycott. Plaintiffs are online news publishers who, as a result of the TNI's group boycott, have been censored, demonetized, demoted, throttled, shadow banned, and or excluded entirely from platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And TNI suppressed wholly true information in furtherance of the economic self-interest of its members. Now, as examples of this, the Trusted News Initiative claimed that it was misinformation to say that COVID might be from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that COVID vaccines don't prevent infection, or that vaccinated folks can transmit the virus. They also applied this label in blatantly false ways by preventing reporting that compromising emails and videos were found on a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden. The council then states that these facts are either true or well within the ambit of legitimate reporting. The Trusted News Initiative both prevented internet users from actively making these assertions, and it also shut down news publishers who merely reported that a given scientist or doctor was making such a factual claim. Thus, the Trusted News Initiative members not only suppressed competition in the online news market, but deprived the public of important information on matters of the highest public concern. The Trusted News Initiative was spearheaded by legacy news organizations like the defendants, fearful of what they themselves described as an existential threat to their economic survival. The explosion online of thousands of new rival sources of news threatening to take audiences' share away from traditional news organizations and to undermine consumers' trust in those organizations. This economic motivation was expressly admitted in 2022 by the founder of the Trusted News Initiative, the BBC, who said, "Of course, the members of the Trusted News Initiative are rivals, but in a crisis situation like this, organizations have to focus on the things they have in common rather than their commercial rivalries. It is important that trusted news providers club together. Because, actually, the real rivalry now is not between, for example, the BBC and CNN globally. It is actually between all trusted news providers and a tidal wave of unchecked reporting that's being piped out mainly through digital platforms. That's the real competition now in the digital media world. Of course, organizations will always compete against one another for audiences, but the existential threat, I think, is that overall breakdown in trust, so that trusted news organizations lose in the long term if audiences just abandon the idea of a relationship of trust with news organizations. So, actually, we've got a lot more to hold us together than we have to work in competition with one another. Now, worth noting here, the U.S. Supreme Court is quoted as noting that the First Amendment, quote, rests on the assumption that the widest possible dissemination of information from diverse and antagonistic sources is essential to the welfare of the public, that a free press is a condition of a free society. Surely a command that the government itself shall not impede the free flow of ideas does not afford non-governmental combinations a refuge if they impose restraints upon the constitutionally guaranteed freedom. The freedom to publish means freedom for all, and not for some. Freedom to publish is guaranteed by the Constitution, but freedom to combine to keep others from publishing is not. Freedom of the press from governmental interference under the First Amendment does not sanction repression of that freedom by private interests. And then we have another Supreme Court opinion that noted that the business of the press is the promotion of truth regarding public matters by furnishing the basis for an understanding of them. Truth and understanding are not wares like peanuts or potatoes. And so, the incidence of restraints upon the promotion of truth through denial of access to the basis of understanding calls into play considerations very different from comparable restraints in a cooperative enterprise having merely a commercial aspect. Now, this story about this landmark lawsuit against the legacy media is being discussed over at the Children's Health Defense today on their daily live stream in greater detail. I highly recommend you check it out if you're interested, and we'll provide a link in the description below so you can check it out if you want to. And that, my friends, will bring our episode to a close once more. For more stories like this, be sure to check back to this channel daily, Monday through Friday, or for numerous written articles daily, you can find them at TrialSiteNews.com 7 days a week. And as ever always, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. From TrialSite News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.